States military is facing enormous challenges. Junior officers are leaving the Army in record numbers. The recent graduates of West Point leaving the Army. What would you do as president to make serving and staying in the military more attractive to young men?
Well, first of all, as Commander-in-Chief, my job is to keep America safe. And that means ensuring that we've got the best military on earth, and that means having the best persons in uniform on earth. We have that right now, but as a consequence of these wars, they have been strained incredibly. I think it's important for us to increase the size of our Army and our Marines so that we can reduce the pace of tours that our young men and women are on. I think it's important for us to work towards increasing military pay. I think the passage of the GI Bill was extraordinarily important as a message to our men and women in uniform that when you serve our country, we will stand by you. I think about my grandfather who served in Patton's Army in World War II. He joined after Pearl Harbor, and we were talking off camera about where did I get the sense of service. I think about my grandparents' generation. My grandfather, after Pearl Harbor, joined the military. My grandmother, who had just had a baby at Fort Leavenworth, stayed back and worked on bomber assembly line. There was a total mobilization. And when my grandfather came back, he came back to a GI Bill that was going to pay for his college education and FHA loans that would help them purchase a home. There was that sense of sacred obligation that, frankly, we have lost during these last two wars. I want to restore that. But it's also important that a president speaks to military service as an obligation, not just of some, but of many. You know, I travel obviously a lot over the last 19 months, and if you go to small towns throughout the Midwest, or the Southwest, or the South, every town has tons of young people who are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's not always the case in other parts of the country, in more urban centers. And I think it's important for the president to say, this is an important obligation. If we are going into war, then all of us go, not just some.
Well, to that end, to get the best and brightest into the military, this university, your alma mater, invited President Ahmadinejad of Iran to be here last year. But they haven't invited ROTC to be on campus since 1969. Should Columbia and elite universities that have excluded ROTC invite them back on campus?
Yes, I think we've made a mistake on that. I recognize that there are students here who have differences in terms of military policy, but the notion that young people here at Columbia or anywhere in any university aren't offered the choice, the option of participating in military service, I think is a mistake. That does not mean that we disregard any potential differences in various issues that are raised by the students here. But it does mean that we should have an honest debate while still offering opportunities for everybody to serve, and that's something that I'm pretty clear about.
You were saying a moment ago that you think there should be more young people serving in the military. We need a broader demographic cross-section. How do you do that short of a draft?
Well, again, I think that inspiring young people to serve is something that the president is uniquely positioned to do. Now, it doesn't always have to be service in uniform. One of the things that if you talk to our generals, they are desperate for is a civilian counterpart to our military forces. Our military is the best in the world, but they are asked to do so many different things because our civilian operations, our State Department, USAID, have been underfunded, have atrophied, and for us to say, serve in the military, but if that's not where you want to serve, learn a foreign language and go into the foreign service. And by the way, we will deploy you in some difficult areas, but that's part of what it means to be an American and to serve and to sacrifice. We need agricultural specialists in places like Afghanistan. We need civil engineers that can do some of the work that currently our military officers are doing. And so I think a president who is consistently asking for young people to reach for something higher, something bigger than themselves, I think we'll get an enormous response.
We have only a couple of minutes left in this segment. You mentioned last week on George Stephanopoulos' show that you'd actually considered signing up for the military yourself. And you seem to imply that if there was a war going on, you might have been more inclined. Is there anything more important about serving in the military during wartime than peacetime?
Well, there's no doubt that if there are wars going on and some are being asked to sacrifice their lives, then I think you have to ask yourself, why them instead of you? And so I think there are special obligations during wartime. But look, we need military. We always have potential conflicts around the world, and our military has to remain strong and ready. And so I want to encourage military service as well as other ways of serving, regardless of whether there's war or not. But I do think that over the last several years, the fact that the burden has been shouldered by such a narrow group is a problem. And how we treat those young people, by the way, when they come home, continues to be a problem. One of my components in terms of national service is having a Veterans Corps, where we are mobilizing citizens to pair up and provide support to our veterans who are coming home, making sure they have the resources, making sure employers are reaching out to them, giving them opportunities to transition into civilian life much more effectively than they're doing right now.
Brief question, because I think we just have a minute. This is from an online question from Gina in Bloomfield, Michigan. She says, how possible would it be to give military-style benefits to non-military citizens who do national service work full-time?
Well, I think it depends on the kind of service that's being provided. As I said, if we are building the kind of foreign service and that is expeditionary, that is going into very difficult, dangerous areas, to carry out the civilian side of the work of helping a country like Afghanistan rebuild, then we should think about what are the benefits of that service. Oftentimes those people are putting themselves in great harm. They are being deployed and their families are undergoing similar sacrifices to the sacrifices that those are serving in the military are. But I do think that we have a special obligation for those who have put their lives at risk, who are risking life and limb on behalf of the security of America. That does not mean that we can't provide other avenues of service. For example, I've said we desperately need teachers, math and science teachers in particular. And so for us to provide full scholarships for those who are willing to get their teaching certificate, get educated in these fields, and then be placed in some of the most underserved communities in the country, that's something that we should be willing to pay for, so that people who want to serve anyway at least can afford it.
We'll be right back with our last segment.